Your pal needed a handyman the other day.
Truck wouldn't turn over this morning.
That could be computer.
What? Hope it's not computer.
Well, hey, what's going on? All right, well, today is the day that me and my boy Bubba, who's right there. Hey, Bubba, we're on a ride. He doesn't know what to make of this really today. I'm not sure why. It's taken him a little bit to get used to this all. But anyway, we're off to a couple hours away from where I live, and we're going to pick up a 351M. At least I hope we do. I mean, if it's not in good shape, then of course I can't. I mean, it's got to at least spin, if you know what I mean. But we're on our way there now, and we'll get some pictures and whatnot, and some video when we pick it up, and Bubba and I bring it back. So it's a 4-hour round trip day. And then I've got to go drop the trailer off that I picked up. I wanted to pick up a open air trailer, so to speak. And the reason for that, of course, is, well, it's going to be easier to drop an engine into it. So, anywho, we're a couple hours out now. A little less, actually. And my Garmin keeps speaking at me because it makes every single Y break in the road or whatever it thinks a major road is, and then it starts chattering at me like, keep left, keep right. So anyway, me and Bubba will see you later. Huh, Bubba? Yeah, that's my Bubba. Well, here we are. We're on our way back. Probably just see it in the back there, but the engine is on the trailer, and we'll get a good shot of that a little later after I get it unloaded. Bubba here is thoroughly unimpressed. Totally unimpressed with the day.
Let me say this. I am not impressed. Not one bit.
He's gotten out a couple times, and he did pretty well off leash, actually, especially when we went to get the engine, which was a storage unit. And just want to give a shout out to Terry and Jonathan, who sold me the engine. And nice guys. Jonathan, I think, is the father is the son of Terry. He's a Ford bullnose guy, and he was putting his truck together. He put a Windsor in it, and he converted it from a two-wheel drive to a four-wheel drive, and put a manual stick in it too. So pretty impressive stuff. He was putting that together. Had everything but the intake manifold on when I was there. Really, really great job. Did a interesting job to the interior that I thought about doing, and that is he dyed his interior plastic, which is, more involved than doing what I did, and it looked really good. So anyway, I just want to thank those guys for a great day. Jonathan is a race car guy. Makes his own race cars and races in Charlotte, so maybe I'll get a chance to see him someday. Take something around the track that he's built up from scratch. He says it's a very expensive hobby. I can only imagine. Anyway, we're almost back to the garage, or at least what I have is a garage, which is not really a garage. So anyway, maybe take a nap. Bubba is definitely unexcited right now. Hang loose, everybody. Hey everybody, how you doing? We're back in the garage here, and got my 351M here. And I just want to sort of go over a few things with it. I'm not the most knowledgeable about the 351M, but I do know a few things about it. I've got one in my truck. So what one of the things you do when you're looking for any engine that you want to rebuild, or you just want to have on as a spare, and this for me is a spare as my light goes out, that's nice, is to make sure you know what you're getting. And in my case, I was dealing with some really great people who were honest, but you know, I mean, you still want to verify what you've got on hand. So hold on, maybe that'll be better. So what I did was I verified the block. Now for the 351M, if it was in a truck, the casting, which is located over here on the side and the lower, is a D7TE. This is a D7TE, so this came out of a pickup truck. Anywhere between 1972, I think, or yeah, 1972 and 1980. If it was in a car, it would have a D8TE. So what that means is D7 means 1977, D8 means 1978. Another thing to look at is on the intake manifold here, there is a, also a part number. And the part number on this one, I think it's the same thing. Yeah. The intake manifold says D7TE. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be a 1977 engine, or at least it was cast in 77. Ford did not cast these blocks sort of on demand. There was a surplus of them from what I understand, and so they put them into the trucks as they had them until they wound out of stock, so to speak. But I have another tell, if you will, that this engine came out of a 1980, 81, or 82 pickup. If you look on the... one thing I liked about this engine was that it still had all the stickers on it, and that is pretty much unheard of, to be quite honest with you. Usually these stickers on the valve covers, they rub off. But this one still had pretty much the one over here intact. And then there's one more back here that not only tells you what plant it came from, what year it was made, and came out of the factory. That part has been rubbed off, but I know from the back of this was from the Cleveland 2 plant. There were 2 plants, Cleveland 1 and Cleveland 2. This came from Cleveland 2. So from this sticker here, which tells you what spark plug to use, what timing to set it, and it has the vacuum diagram on it, most of it anyway. Some of it's rubbed off. This came with AC. Now I also know it came with AC, or at least I know it had AC on it, because this right here is the AC bracket. So this could have been put on afterwards, but from the factory, I know from this sticker, it came with AC. The AC bracket is really kind of the tell here, or at least narrows down the years. Because all I know so far is that the engine, without the back sticker on it, without having that number, which I do not, I know the month and the year, I know the month and the day it was made. This engine was made on January 12th. So what year? That's the question. I know from this AC bracket that it reads EOTH. EO is 1980. So this engine had to have been in a 1980, a 1981, or a 1982 pickup. Because they wouldn't have had EOTH pre-1980. It would have been a D number. That's about as close as I've been able to decipher this so far. Now, how do I know this is really an M block? Aside from the casting, there are a few telltale signs. The 351 Windsor has the port for the radiator coming right out of the intake manifold. The intake manifold on a 351 Windsor has the air and the coolant together. The Cleveland, the 351 modified, or the 351M has it in the block itself. And right here, there's my thermostat for the coolant from the radiator. It's in the block. There are other ways to tell as well. On the heads, right here in the corner here, the corner here, the corner back there, and the corner back here, on the head itself, it has the letter M. But there's another way. If you don't have those things, and it might be kind of hard to see, but in the Windsor, the exhaust down here, the exhaust manifold, it comes on the Windsor, they're more pronounced into the block. That is, the exhaust manifold part of the block is almost, it's not completely flush, but it's nearly flush. On the Cleveland or the 351M, the exhaust manifold ports come out of the block a little bit, and that's what I have here. The engine turns freely, pretty well. I can't turn it by hand, but if I get a socket on the what's left of the harmonic balancer here, then I can turn it pretty easily, and I can see the pistons moving up and down. Now, I want to say one other thing, and I want to preface this by saying that I am not the most knowledgeable about all this stuff. I recently got into sort of a debate with a great guy on YouTube. I recommend you go see his channel. He's very knowledgeable. He's a machinist, and he knows a lot more than I do about some things, but he's not very big on the 351M. The name of the website is MyVintageIron. And he made a comment about the 351. He went through a overview of all the Ford engines, beginning with the flathead. He didn't spend a lot of time with the flathead. And then spoke about the Y blocks, the Windsor, Cleveland, and then even those bigger, the 426s and whatnot. The 351 modified was an engine that was made due basically to stupid requirements from the federal government that punished big block, that's a Chevy term, big block, small block, but let's, for the sake of argument, to punish big block owners. And so they tried to come up with a smaller block engine that would meet emissions requirements. So, according to MyVintageIron, the engine is not a good performer, and there's not a lot of parts for it. And this is true, by the way. But there was a lot of potential in the engine, just like there was for the 351 Cleveland. Now, there's some differences between the 351 Cleveland and the 351M. The 351 Cleveland was definitely a performer. It was built that way, and all you have to do is go to the 1960s and look at what was happening on the racetrack. The 351 Cleveland was eating everybody up, and I mean, they were chewing up Chevys. and to the chagrin of the Chevy people. So what I want to do here is I want to read a little bit from Bubba. This is Bubba's M-Block Ford 8 V8 workshop. This is old, very old. Matter of fact, I'm surprised the website is still live. But I just want to read to you a little bit of what he says, just so you know I'm not sort of, I mean, I have some evidence for what I'm saying here. He states in the first paragraph here on big block comparisons that people would swap in 429s and 460s for their 350 counterparts. This is all very true, by the way. People want a lot more power, and the 420s, 460s are beasts of an engine, and a lot of people take like my truck and they'll drop a 460 in it. Absolutely true. The engines are very powerful, great torque, and very reliable. Those engines are from the 385 series engines. Ford speaks in terms of series, not big block, small block. They have 335 series and the 385 series. The 385 series engines are bigger. The Cleveland and the 351M are basically 335 series engines, so they're smaller. This is what Bubba says. The M-Block engine in factory trim has vast, untapped power potential. It is smaller and lighter than a big block, which is why it was developed in the first place. And when properly built, the M-Block's 400 power output is comparable to most big blocks. And what he's saying is basically pound for pound, the 351, whether it's the Cleveland or the 351M, which can also be stroked to a 400, by the way, can chew up a stock 429. Now, Bubba is, of course, not saying that cubic inches don't matter. Cubic inches equals power. Cubic inches plus compression equals power. And the 351 modified was not a high compression engine. The reason for this is because in the 1970s, what the federal government did is it outlawed, literally, leaded gas. And unleaded gasoline is a different type of gasoline. It had a lower octane rating than regular. And as a matter of fact, regular leaded gas, I think they were getting up into the 100s in terms of octane before it was completely banned. And you know what unleaded gas looks like today. We're looking in the high 80s, low 90s. So you have to lower compression. And you have to lower compression because of the gas that's available to us would cause detonation in a high compression engine. This is, by the way, very bad. You can ruin your engine under such a thing. And you certainly would be overhauling that engine quicker than you would if you had high octane, high compression. You don't want to run high octane, low compression. So these were lower compression engines, absolutely true. If you want to look at the exceptions, by the way, to what gasoline these days, we still run leaded gasoline. You have to go to a store to buy it for racing, but they're also in all of our aircraft engines. Jet fuel is leaded gas, folks. So I guess my rant would be, let's bring back leaded gas, shall we? Now these things can be modified for high compression. And under such situations, they'd be very powerful engine pound for pound. Now, back to Bubba. You can always build a bigger engine that will stomp a smaller engine, but so what? When you factor in the costs and the time and the hassles involved in swapping engines in a real-world handling performance penalties of excess weight on the front end of a vehicle, it's easier to put the benefits of the M-Block engine in perspective. So this is what my vintage iron was complaining about. He thinks it's too expensive. You can get a better engine, especially in the Windsor, and you can not spend all that time. But after you, I mean, really, what Bubba's saying is the time is negligible here. You're going to get a heavier engine if you drop something above a 351 in it. Maybe I'll do a video on the differences between the Windsor and the Cleveland era later. The Windsor was most popular. It's probably one of the longest running engines they had. Easy to get parts for, but it's a different engine. It's not. It's completely different in the way its heads are fashioned, and the heads on the Cleveland and the 351 modified are really designed for performance. If you talk to anybody in the Cleveland plant in the 1970s through 1980, they didn't believe that they were making weak engines. They believed what they were doing is performance engines. So, you know, at least if you look at those people on the assembly, or talk to those people on the assembly line and even the engineers, they were not making engines that were pussified, let's put it that way.
Love winning. Schultze.
Winning red ribbons, pussy.
The 351M has a history of being a smog engine, but as Bubba noted, and guy who wrote a book, last name is Reed, forgot his first name. I'll throw his cover up. He says that this is a common held opinion, but it overlooks real potential again in what the 351M and the 351 Cleveland can do. The 351 Cleveland was certainly a smog engine, but not because Ford designed it that way, but because of regulations from the federal government, and therefore the 351M and the whole Cleveland family went away at Ford. The Windsor was easily more adaptable to all the crap that had to come on to an engine for smog and and the 351M and the Cleveland were not designed for that. So that's my quibble with MyVintageIron. And that is not to say that he's a moron or an idiot. I'm not criticizing him in any way. I just have a different opinion, if you will, about it. Everybody has their preferred or biased opinions about motors, what they can do, which ones are the best. And when I bought my truck, I was actually surprised that I had a 351 Cleveland-like era engine in it, a 351M. And so, to be honest with you, based on my personal experience, I'm not a hot rodder, but for pickup that can do some light duty work and have the performance of a big block, sort of, the 351M is I just kind of fell in love with the sucker. So I've got pretty much a stock engine in there now that was rebuilt. I wanted to have a spare. What I will probably do, and I haven't really decided what I will do with this baby yet. It's going to be some time, so you're not going to see any builds on this engine that I bought over the weekend anytime soon. I have a lot of work to do and a lot of thinking to do about what I do want to do, what's doable, what is going to be in my budget, really I have to dig into the sucker to figure out or make sure everything's okay. There are some things I could do to this. I could bore it. I don't think this engine's been touched. I can bore it. I could put different heads on it. I could put a different crank in it, different pistons. I could do a whole host of things to it in order to make it maybe a little bit more of a performer than the engine that's in there now. So all of that is to come up, so to speak. Not a bad day, I would say, for the life of the Socrates mechanic. If I want to say one other thing. If you look at if you go, maybe if you just go to Facebook Marketplace, search for a 351 Cleveland, legit. They stopped making them in the United States in 1982. That's the last time they were in any vehicle. By the time you get to the 80s, the 351 Cleveland was still produced in Australia. That continued until the 1990s. I'm not sure when. It might have been just 1990, but certainly it continued long through the 80s into the 1990s in Australia. So you can still find some parts for the Cleveland from the Australian experience. And there's some things on the Cleveland that'll easily transfer over to this. And actually, to be quite honest with you, there are some things from the Windsor that will transfer over to the Cleveland, but not very many things. Yeah, I mean, then that requires some modification. But if you look at the prices, the 351 Cleveland, go look. See if you can find one. Tell me what the price is. Then, look for a 351M 400 Ford engine. And you tell me what the price is. They are relatively plentiful, and they are relatively very cheap. And the reason for that is because of the common opinion that they're a junk engine, which is part of the reason for this video. This part of the video is because I think that's demonstrably untrue. So as I tear this baby down, I'll take you along, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And we'll build this baby from the ground up again. That's about it. I've got some things coming up on my shoulder's just about healed, so I've got some things coming up on the Ford. I still have to put in the dual pronged oil pressure unit. I'm not real happy with the brass fittings I got. The threading just seems off. So here's the plate for the AC. It's very different from the Windsor. There's the M. I can probably see a better one over here. Hold on. Right there, you can see the M. This is what I got to change out. This, obviously on this engine, as you can tell here, the oil pressure sensor went to idiot lights. It's smaller, so it's meant only to trip a light. The one that goes to a gauge is huge, but I was trying to fit some of my parts into this that I want to put on the truck to make a dual oil pressure gauge system, and it just didn't fit into the threads. I mean, this screws in very nicely, and the brass fittings that I had, let me show you here. This is kind of the unit all put together. Did not. This thing did not work, and the oil pressure sending unit didn't screw into the top of this very well. So I've got a new one coming, and hopefully that will work. My new oil pressure sender screws into this just right nice. There's the part number for the intake manifold, and you probably can't see it, but right there is the block casting number. I don't know if that's visible. One thing else that's interesting about the intake manifold, which I didn't know, is that it numbers the cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is quite nice, actually. Another thing on the Cleveland and on the 351M 400, this plate right here, timing. This is the timing cover. The water pump goes over this, and the unit down here is totally open, and oil comes through here and drops right into the oil pan. If you take this plate off, you're going to see the oil pan protrude out just a little bit, and it's totally open. So if any oil gets into here where the timing chain is, it drops right into the oil pan. So this is kind of an interesting system and a setup on the Cleveland type engines, is that you have to have a gasket in between the cover and the block, and then between the cover and the water pump. Believe me, it's a little bit unnerving to get that all in. A little bit of ultra black. No, I used ultra gray because that resists antifreeze. Works very well on these types of situations. Again, if you finger tight it, leave it overnight, and then go ahead and torque it down. Timing marker is still on this, but most things are going to have to be replaced, to be quite honest with you. Okay, that's pretty much it. I hope that was helpful in some way. I just want to reiterate to my vintage iron, I'm not looking to start an argument. I think we just have a different opinion. I respect his totally. He makes some good points. In general, I totally did agree with him. But you know, I mean, when you have, you know, admittedly, I'm kind of biased towards the engine, and for my needs, my purposes, it fulfills it rather well. And if I can squeak a little more performance out of this engine in my build, if I choose to do so, I'm going to do that. Otherwise, you know, I'll just rebuild it as stock. It's more than enough power for me. And I'll tell you, on that Ford right there, if I drop the clutch in second gear, my back wheels are peeling out. So you know, I mean, it's not like it's a weak, gutless engine. So for the power, pound by pound, you can get some really good results out of these smaller, lighter engines than a stock 400, 429 and whatnot. I think Bubba's right about that, and I think Rita's right about that. Just looking at the numbers. But you'll always be able to find an engine with a bigger, more powerful output than any smaller engine. But you certainly can take smaller engines, even today's engines, and create more output with less displacement and outperform those stock engines for sure. So anyway, that's all that's all for that. Hang loose, everybody. We'll catch you in the next video.